going to go ahead and we're going to prime our primary set. So there's our primary set. Comes in a bag. The drip chamber, a little pinch to fill it just under halfway. There is a little scored marking there. Here is the little cassette that we have to prime. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip it upside down and release this first green clamp. Rectangular kidney-shaped area filled up with saline. Once that's filled up, you want to flip it over right side up, and you'll notice that this round chamber will fill up. Then the fluid proceeds down. This is how you feed the cassette into the IV pump. So you want to open up this latch, and if you look here, there's this little, I call it a handle. You grab it by this handle and it should slide in. In it goes. Close the door and you should be set. So let's talk about programming this pump. So this is the primary IV. So we'll turn this guy on. I'm actually going to hit this clear. 2 beeps, 3 beeps, 4 beeps. After 4 beeps, you'll notice that the total volume delivered will register as 0. Okay. This button here will switch between primary, oops, we gotta go. We'll switch between primary and secondary. So right now, secondary is, there's 0. So we're not worrying about secondary right off the bat here. So we want to make sure it says primary. And we are going to begin by setting the volume to be infused, VTBI. And let's say we've got a 500 bag there. So we're going to go ahead and set it to 500. So you can scroll through using this quick set button. It'll start at 0. Goes up in increments 10, 25, 50, 100, 150, 250, up to 500. Now that being said, you can also use these up and down arrows, and that's for a more accurate, so let's say we want to go down to 450. So you'd have to hold this button down. If you hold it down, it works kind of like your oven. It speeds up a little bit. So that is the volume to be infused, and this actually lights up there when it's pointing at volume to be infused. And then rate, so now rate lights up. We can set our rate. So we can again use the quick set buttons. So we can go up quite quickly, up to 999. And let's say we want to just set it at 250, shall we? 152, and it doesn't allow me 250, so I'm going to go down using the arrow. And so our volume to be infused is set, our rate is set, and now we can go ahead and hit run, and it's going to infuse for us. Now, how do we know that it's infused? Oh, what does that mean? Occlusion. Our clamp is on. So it lets you know that really quickly, doesn't it? Let's use the silence button. Hit silence, and it does in fact silence it. After 2 minutes time, the beeping will kick in again, and you'll have to hit silence yet again if you haven't fixed the problem. We'll unclamp this so that it stops yelling at us, and we'll go to hold just to sort of reset its memory a bit, and now it's running. We can tell by the sound. You'll also notice that there's a flashing green drop-shaped light here, and that means that it's infusing. The other way that you're going to be able to tell, you can see that it is dripping, so you know that your IV is infusing. The other feature that I would like to show you is the back prime feature. So I'm going to put it on to hold, and I'm going to grab a 10cc syringe, and I'm going to pop it right onto this little lure lock here. Now, reasons that you would use the back prime. If you've got air in this cassette and it starts beeping at you, you have the option of back priming. It actually brings fluid from your primary line and redistributes it in the cassette and brings it out. This must be pointed at hold, and then we'll hit the back prime button and you can watch this 10cc syringe then starting to fill up with fluid from our primary bag. Another reason why you'd use this is if you have a secondary piggyback hanging, and it'll connect in there. You'll see that in a minute. And your piggyback has gone dry and now there's air in there and now it's beeping at you. You can actually back prime into your secondary line so that it's now primed for the next time. The other feature that is important to note is this titrate button. We're going to go and set this rate to something a little bit lower. We're going to pretend that we are infusing an epi drip, let's say. And so we're going only at 5 mils an hour. So this is a very, very slow rate. And that is when you will notice a little message comes up here. It says micro. So that means that it is infusing at a very slow yet constant rate of 5 mils per hour. If we increase the rate, once you hit 100, the micro button is gone. So it's just letting you know that rather than, once every hour the machine putting out 5 mils, it's actually ever so slowly at a very constant rate, at a very micro rate, infusing this. So that means that this is a pump that can accurately be used for very slow drips and very accurate titrations of, life-saving drugs. Now let's say you've got your epi drip going at 5 mils an hour and the doctor says, okay, let's increase that drip. When it's on micro, it does go up and down by the decimal point rather than by the full unit. So when I flip this over to set rate, the IV stops. So now your patient has a chance to drop their blood pressure or whatever right now. The doctor says, can you increase it to 7, let's say. So what you're going to do is you are going to hit the titrate button. So you hit the titrate button. At the same time, you're going to use your up arrows. So, okay, now the patient's heart rate's going at 150 and the doctor says, okay, shut it down just to back down to 5. You're going to hold that titrate button and down you go to 5. So as you're doing this, the drip hasn't stopped dripping. Now let's go on to talking about the secondary. So it's just short like this. And actually there's a little hanger that comes in the bag. We don't require it. We would only require it if we were hanging it by gravity, but this pump does the work for us, so that is a nice feature. Okay, so here's a secondary. Make sure the clamp is on, and it's a roller clamp. Clamp it all the way down. We're using aseptic technique when we prime our secondary line, of course. Now, you got a choice here. One way of doing it is you can, without priming this guy, you can go ahead and connect it, go to hold, and back prime, which means that the fluid from this primary line is going to go up and prime the line for you. Sometimes that's kind of easier. The other way would be to ever so slowly release this clamp so that it very slowly, because it likes to go fast. So what you want to do is you want to switch from primary over to secondary. You got to be on set rate or set volume to be infused in order to flip it over. So right now we're at primary. Hit that button and it now reads secondary. The volume is at 0. We'll go ahead and set 100 bag. Now the rate, let's say we want it to go at 100 an hour. And the up-down buttons there apply same as it does for the primary line. Okay, and then hit run. Okay, so this states secondary. The green little droplet is flashing. We can hear the machine, and if we look up at our drip chamber, we will see the drips in the drip chamber. After 100 mils is infused, what it's going to do is automatically flip over to the primary information. So whatever we had set. So we had 444 to be infused left over, and the rate was at 5. So after the secondary is completely infused and the volume to be infused registers 0, it'll automatically flip over to primary. If you don't want it to flip over to primary, there's 2 things you can do. Number 1, you can clamp your primary line so that the beeping sound will occur, meaning that there's an occlusion, so that'll bring you to the bedside to check it out. The other thing you can do is you can go ahead and set your primary rate at 0. So when the secondary volume to be infused is completely infused and it says 0, the primary will not kick in and the beeper will go off. The other thing that I wanted to show you is at the back, there's 2 buttons. Audio is the one, and there's high and low. So high is loud as heck, low is a little quieter. There's also a lockout button. So the idea here is so that your patient can't go adjusting your IV on you. Up top here it says locked, and what that does is I try and set the rate, it doesn't happen for me. Quick set, nothing happens. Now if I go ahead and unlock it, the locked message has come off and now my keypad is functional again. On each IV we have attached to it some tips, and it sort of gives you a very quick synopsis of how to set up, and then on the back it's basically a little quick troubleshooting card. So occlusion, for example, proximal or distal occlusion, that is a possible cause, and the corrective action is check clamps, unkink tubing, or check IV site. Completes the review for the IV infusion pump.